Here. So I was just reading real quick over your form. Great Pyrenees Dane mix, huh?
Mastiff Dane.
Mastiff Dane.
Yeah.
That's right. Sorry. I don't know where I got Great Pyrenees from. I was like literally reading it right now. Okay. And fearful of dogs in the beginning, is that correct?
She's dog reactive now when we're on the leash. Like even just walking over here, seeing a bunch of the dogs, she barked and lunged towards them. I think that she wants to play with them, but it's an aggressive move. Even now she's kind of...
Yeah, I can see her. We got a couple of dogs over there.
She gets a little bit a little bit manic
Sure.
when other dogs are around, and when we're walking, behind fences, that really sets her off. And she's a couple times, not every time, but a couple times she's gotten reactive with a person walking the other way, which is really a bit concerning.
Sure.
So outside, she's a bit tough to control, even on the leash. When we take her in the dog park, she's for the most part great with other dogs. Once we get the leash off her, she runs around. She's not aggressive in the dog park.
Okay.
And then inside, she's real stubborn. She's very. She's gotten to where if my wife goes outside, she'll go to the front door and just bark.
Okay.
So she's getting a little bit of
separation,
anxiety stuff.
Okay. Yeah, I can. Her demeanor here. She's a little bit nervy.
Yeah.
The way she was kind of moving against you and stuff earlier. She's a little bit more on the cautious side.
She seems nervy all the time. She seems very nervous, and then when she gets scared, she barks and lunges.
Okay. Has she ever met a dog on leash before, or have you always kept her away because of that behavior?
When she was a young puppy, we meet and greeted with dogs out on the street. And we stopped doing that for the most part because she's had a lot of bad. You can see it happening when they're even,
starting to approach.
She starts getting pretty tense.
Okay. And you've had her since how old?
We've had her since she was 10 weeks old.
Okay. When did you start to see the behaviors happening? Like with the tension on the leash, when did that begin?
Relatively early, but it's definitely gotten worse lately.
Okay. Because she's 15 months now, correct?
Yeah, she's 13 months now.
Okay.
From the start, she was pretty, at the very beginning, it's gone through phases. We tried this Prong collar.
Yeah.
It's helped for quite a while. It gave her when she launched, she tugged that, shocked her into behaving a bit more.
Yeah.
And, I think some of the time it would probably be fine. Like I said, I think she does just want to kind of jump around and play with the dogs for the most part. But
sure,
it's such a
and she's a big dog too, so it's not like you can really gamble it. Yeah.
And then sometimes it's definitely not playful. It's definitely it sounds very aggressive.
Okay. When you feel like it sounds more aggressive, the other dog
Yeah, the other dog. There's a couple dogs in our block that if they're out and they're up on the fence,
Okay. So that makes more sense. Yeah. Okay. And I'm assuming before reaching out, you or Rebecca did some kind of research on how we train, we use what methods we use.
Yeah. You got a really good referral from one of Becca's friends.
Gotcha.
Christina. I don't know if you remember.
I've had a few Christinas.
Something. Ukrainian Village.
Oh yeah. I know what you're talking about with the Bernese Mountain Dog.
Bernese Mountain Dog.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah.
So, so we use e-collar, which Christina was actually completely against e-collar. And then when I told her it's a miniaturized TENS unit because she's a physical therapist, she was like, "Oh shit!" She's like, "This whole time I thought it was electrocution." She's like, "I shock people all day." She's like, "I'm a physical therapist." I'm like, "Yeah, it's just a TENS unit." So it's just misinformation. So especially when we got a big dog like this, you want as much control as possible.
Yeah.
And e-collar really helps close that gap. Now, me personally, I use e-collar for all our dogs. I don't care if it's a little 8-pound Chihuahua to a big, large dog like this. I do e-collar for all dogs because it's the only tool that guarantees 100% control. Okay, on or off leash. So if you're at the dog park and she's getting tense and you're across the dog park, you can stop her. If she's running away because she's scared, you can make her return. Pending you know how to use your tool.
Yeah.
So it's my go-to tool, whereas for a lot of trainers or people, they think of it as a last resort.
Yeah.
because they think it's like for aggressive dogs or whatever, and that's not true. Like all dogs, in my opinion, need reliable obedience. Because even a friendly dog, like I have a client whose dog broke her husband's shoulder 3 times and sent them to the ER twice in a couple of years. Okay, friendly dog. 90-pound dog, however, that's very powerful. We got a dog coming up this way, just so you know.
That's quite a bit what we're worried about. You know, we have a toddler,
Mm-hmm.
and you know, she's tiny. You know, Prudy wags her tail and stuff around her, but if she, you know, spazzes and, you know, leaps into her or something, you know, she's really bony.
Correct.
Really hurt.
So, the way I go about this, because we want to, of course, kind of settle down these nerves, like all this right here. Now, this is more just alert state. You see how she's posturing with her her paw there, right? Is this like we can either interrupt and kind of break that focus there, because that staring could escalate, right? So like right now she's just like watching and stuff, but the longer she stares, or if that dog, there we go. Yeah. So what you're gonna do here is shorten your leash and then go ahead and pull up on your leash. And you're gonna keep that pressure up, and then you're gonna relax up, and now relax. Okay, what I'm gonna have you do is every time Prudy here gets up, I want you just to automatically just pull straight up until you feel her settle, and then you're gonna relax, okay? Don't worry about saying sit or anything like that. You're just gonna keep that pressure up, okay? What that does is it helps up, yep, and now relax. What it does is it helps de-escalate the brain, okay? So this is simply a Band-Aid for the moment while we have dogs and all that stuff going on, okay? So here, we wanna disrupt the pattern either through e-collar or with the training to a level where we don't even have to do anything, ideally, right? She's here with you, sitting down, and then she sees stuff happening and she's able to relax, and that escalates, okay? However, it's not always gonna work that way. Sometimes you might have a dog that surprises her or surprises you, and you're gonna get reactivity. Then you also wanna know how to stop it within that moment, okay? So we have prevention and intervention, essentially. So obedience is only part of the answer. Obedience is formal control. You know, so if she's at your hip, glued to you because of heel, whatever, we should not see reactivity, because she's more concerned about you and your hip than she is about the dog passing by. Okay. Now, if we still see reactivity, then we have to correct it using a different approach. Okay. So it's not that. The reason why we do the heel first is heel helps relax a lot of dogs. Okay. Not because of the obedience aspect of it, but because of the discipline aspect of it. Okay. So e-collar is what I call a bite on the button. You press it, there's a muscle contraction, and the way we layer it is we help her to understand it as a line of communication. Okay, so like your prong collar is a line of communication. Right now that she's relaxed, you are relaxed. Earlier when she became escalated, you added tension, you de-escalated, or I'm not sorry, you released the tension, and then in response to tell her, yes, that's what I wanted you to do. Okay, so you have a line of communication. So we teach the e-collar similarly. So the idea here with the reactivity, and when you got a nervy dog, right, who like moves around a lot, she needs to know how to settle, how to just relax. Like you can see here, she's still not relaxed, right? She's still staring, and she should be in a more passive state, just kind of like whatever, okay? And that's what we're trying to achieve. When you have a dog in a more passive state, you're less likely to see reactivity because it takes more steps up and relax, because it takes more steps for her to go from passiveness to reactivity, okay? But here, because she's already in a stimulated state, because she's still looking, she's more easily gonna jump to reactivity because she's already at a 2. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So we're trying to get her to a 0 to 1. Yep. And up and relax. Right there. Good. We always want to get her to be in a passive state as much as possible. Will she always be calm? No. She's gonna get excited, playful, and all that stuff. But in a setting like this, when we're not doing anything, she should be kind of same energy. Okay, so it's kind of like if you go into a restaurant and there's a couple who's like super loud and it's a nice quiet restaurant, it's kind of like, got to read the room, right? So same thing for the dogs. So the reactivity stuff, and then just helping her, good, to relax and not be so nervy. We want to see how much is the heel gonna fix, okay?
Using the e-collar.
Correct, with the e-collar. So the e-collar is gonna be be the tool that's gonna snap this away, or be able to get you to break this alertness, okay? Because with the prong collar, even if you gave her a harsh pop right now, if she's like at a 15 in terms of intensity and your hardest correction is a 10, and that's the furthest you can go, 15 and 10 are never going to get matched, that she's always going to be like that.
Yeah. And it's been a sort of a scale with her as she's adjusted to the prong collar.
Correct.
At the beginning, if she did start going after something and, you know, she reaches, you know, you give her a yank, she's
Correct.
like, oh shit, what happened? And she comes back down.
Mm-hmm.
But now she is pretty familiar with it. I mean, it still works like this, but like I think if a dog just walked right by.
Right, then you have the threshold thing.
Yeah.
And that's all normal. Prong collar is a very effective tool, but it's very common. I actually just had a consultation earlier who had the same problem with their dog, where the prong collar seemingly stopped working because the dog got too tough. Because they had it as a puppy, and as the dog matured and got bigger and filled out, the prong corrections weren't as effective. Okay, so it's very common. It's a great tool, especially when we have larger dogs like this. So I had a young lady who was like 90 pounds, and she had a 150-pound Great Dane, who was also dog reactive. So she was on prong and e-collar, right? Because if she turned the corner and saw a dog and her dog blew up, she needed something that would allow her to immediately gain control, while the e-collar allowed her to stop or de-escalate the dog without the need of physical strength. Okay, so it's like you're gonna end up being on the same setup, prong and e-collar. They're perfectly safe to use together. It gives you the most control. Okay. Most of it's going to be done with the e-collar, but because of her size, you're going to want something that'll allow you to more easily physically handle her. Question so far?
No, I mean, I think everything sounds really good. We just want something that assists her in mellowing out so that she doesn't have this, you know, tension all the time.
Correct.
I think she's a sweet dog underneath, but it's really underneath, you know.
Yeah. And I hear it all the time. Because we live in very different worlds. Like, you know, here, these are just other dogs enjoying the park, whatever. But for her, it's like your own territory. And then for her, if a dog comes in, she doesn't know if that's a threat or not, right? And because she's nervous, or a nervous dog, there you go, she's more likely to perceive threat. Because in her world, it's kill or be killed, right? But in our world, we're like, that's just a person with their dog at the park, right? She doesn't understand that logic. So the way we go about this and like what determines price and length of time is simply like what you're trying to achieve with Prudy here. So we have the reactivity, of course. There's only been a few instances of lunging at people, correct?
Yeah, but, you know, caveat is that we're pretty worried about it now. So I'll still walk by people, but my wife will cross the street every time.
Sure.
Just to try to avoid that situation before it even starts.
Sure. So human reactivity is almost always the first thing that goes away. Okay. Yeah, there you go. Up. Good. You're good. Then relax. Good job. Human reactivity is almost always the first thing that goes away. Okay.
Yeah.
Only thing, only variable would be is if the person came into your personal space.
Yeah.
So if like you're walking with her and someone just came up like, hey, look at that cute dog, she may be reactive there. But in terms of passing, that goes away.
Good.
Okay, so I'm actually not too worried about that because it's been a few times. That's correct, right? Not like every day.
Yeah, no, not every day.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if it was like an everyday thing, that's where like, oh, okay, like what's going on here? But that's all, that's all based upon her nervousness.
Yeah.
Okay, that's why we're getting that stuff. So we have the reactivity, dog and human, and then we of course have a bit of separation anxiety with her as well, right?
Yeah. And
Okay.
just a lot of general stubbornness and stuff inside as well.
Um,
Especially when she gets in her, you kind of see when she gets in it's like a, you know, her manic state.
Sure.
She's just not going to listen.
Gotcha. And is this like barking out the window type stuff?
Barking at the window, or even kind of bullying our older dog a little bit.
Okay.
You know, we tell her no, and then sometimes that works and breaks it up. Sometimes that sets her into, you know, it escalates her a little bit.
Gotcha.
You know, she doesn't hurt him or anything, but just, you know, not
He's
letting
old.
him come down the stairs.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, that's this type of thing.
Yeah. So that stuff is the easiest to address.
Okay, good.
Okay. The stuff that's going to be actually the hardest thing that I'm picking up is maybe the separation anxiety. Separation anxiety is almost always the hardest thing to fix. Okay, because it's usually relationship based.
Yeah.
and there's going to have to be changes, and a lot of times people don't want to make the changes.
Right.
You know, like let's say they coddle their dog or give their dog too much affection because it makes them feel good, but then they have separation anxiety on the other end. They don't want to give up the affection or whatever.
I mean, I think, yeah, if we could solve everything, that's great. If we had to choose, you know, she's not tearing up her crate. You know, she's not like super separation anxiety. It's just annoying that if one of us walks out to the car, she starts barking.
Okay, so the barking that you, like, let's say you both left.
Reactive stuff is the more serious part for us.
Right, but if you both left the house, would she bark or does she settle?
I think what she does, we used to have, again, we had a daughter, so we moved the camera into the daughter's room. She used to be in the room with the camera, and she'd bark, you know, a minute, and then settle down.
Oh, okay.
She'd be fine.
Okay. And is that still like?
I think that still happens, but I don't know. It's just not. It's just
okay.
Not in the room with the camera.
I would experiment with that. Okay, because if she barks for a minute and then quiets down when you both leave, still, that I'm not worried about. Okay. Pending your neighbors aren't complaining, whatever.
No, they're fine. Yeah.
If it's your home and Rebecca leaves or vice versa and we get barking, that's actually not a problem.
Yeah,
okay.
What she does.
So that's actually easier. Okay.
Good.
So in terms of like length of time, you're in the 6, 9 to 12 week range, depending on how much control you want. Okay. So the way I teach is I have a feel for what you're needing and wanting. Mm-hmm. I look at the dog and I'm like, okay, this is what I think the dog needs and wants, right? And then I give you your options.
Yeah.
The 6 week program is like the bare bones minimum, okay? Where I'm like, I look at everything and I go, okay, I think I can get all this done within that time frame. Mm-hmm. Heal is typically 2 classes, and in that time frame, in those starting 2 classes, we're already working on reactivity. Okay, so we're working on it as soon as we get in. And then each class, you check in with me and go, hey Jesse, good week, bad week, and I'll ask questions. Why was it bad? Oh, we had reactivity. How many times? 5 out of 10 dogs. Okay, that's 50%.
So, sorry, you probably told this to my wife already. You do the class with her solo, or
no? I give you instructions in person,
Gotcha.
And you're training.
Good.
Okay, so we're here. I'm here with you. I'm coaching you. Okay, so I don't touch the dog anymore.
Okay.
So, the first class I teach you the exercise. I give you a couple of tips. I go start off with this. You come back week 2. How'd it go? Jessie, it's amazing. She's made a 180. We still saw reactivity, but it was with dogs behind fences. I go, that makes sense. That's normal. We're gonna make some adjustments. I teach class 2, the second half of heal. We're gonna make a couple of tweaks. I'll see you in another week, right? You come back, how are we doing? Jessie, even better. We're only struggling with this bit now. Okay, this is what you're gonna do with that, okay? So you're my feedback, and how you're progressing determines how we move forward, okay? Reactivity is pretty straightforward in most cases. The only times where it's a problem is if the dog's done it for so long, like I mean years and years. It's so habitual, it's harder to stop, so it takes the person longer. Or 2, the dog is legitimately throwing out threat, like I'm gonna kill this dog, whatever, that you were really having to squash it. Okay, most cases it's pretty straightforward. By the 3rd week, I expect we should be over the reactivity stuff. Okay,
that's amazing.
If all that is going well, then we move into recall, or we would move into like correcting the stuff in the house, right? Which is really simple. It's really just information. Okay. From there, the next most important thing would be recall if we're thinking obedience, right? And again, just keeping track on the
recall. Sorry.
Come when called.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. So like if she got off the leash because she's spooked,
Gotcha.
because a nervous dog like this, if she goes into flight mode, like good luck. Okay.
She's a couple times torn out of our hands in excitement.
Uh-huh.
Just walking her, and she's barreling across the street, jumping.
Yeah. And that we shouldn't even see anymore.
Yep.
But definitely if something happens and she gets spooked or she gets off the leash for whatever reason, you have a means of getting your dog back. Okay. Recall is typically 2 classes as well. So we have 2 on the heel, 2 on the recall, and then that leaves us 2 for the behavioral stuff. Okay. Behavior is simple because it's simply don't do that. Obedience is more complex because you're teaching a skill. Does that make sense?
Yeah, a little bit.
So like I was raised old school, so I was spanked. If I didn't do my homework, if I talked back to my mom, or if I didn't do my chores, spank. Yep, right?
Yeah.
Same thing for the dog. If she jumps on a dog, mounts a dog, or barks at a dog, that dog will just bite, to tell her, don't do that to me, right? So once you understand behavior and consequence, it's fairly straightforward. It's just a matter of being consistent.
Yep.
Okay? And I'll give you tools for inside the home and we have a dog approaching, just so you're aware. Inside the home, so that you're not always collar dependent. Okay, which leads me to my next point. Is the most common question I get is, when does the e-collar go away? Okay, in my book, when you need it, it doesn't. So what that means is, if she's a great dog inside the house, you don't need it. But if you're going to be on a walk, you need it. She's going to be off leash, you need it. If you're going to have guests come over and she gets really excited with guests, you need it. Does that make sense?
It does. And do you see them start to dread it or anything like this? Do you see them, the dogs start to know that the collar is sort of like a...
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so think of the collar as a cop on a collar. Do you drive?
I do.
Do you go on the expressway?
I do.
Do you go the speed limit?
Not always.
Okay. Most people don't.
Yeah.
Okay. But if you see a squad car, what happens?
Slow down. Send brakes.
Right?
Yeah.
Because now we have threat of consequence.
Right.
Right? So it's the same thing for the dog. Think of the e-collar as a cop on a collar. Okay? When now there's threat of consequence. So the most common thing people always tell me is like, well, shouldn't the dog learn to be a good dog? And I go, no, dogs don't do that. I'm like, and as humans, right? Like, we know things. We know you don't go past 70 on the expressway, but we still do it, right? It's called opportunistic behavior. It's a part of survival instinct. So like, let's say there's a pond of water with an alligator in it, and the animals know they won't drink the water. If they see the alligator leave, everybody comes to drink water, okay? Because that's opportunistic behavior.
Yep.
Same thing for the dog. So if she's like, hey, that collar's not on, and I can get away with being a brat, or I can be a little bit more nervy, she's gonna do so, okay? It's not that you're always using it, it's that it's present, and in case something happens, you have a means of control, okay? And like, people will say like, well, I see dogs that don't need it. I'm like, yeah, that's that dog's personality type, if anything. Or two, you're looking at a trainer's dog who spent hundreds of thousands of hours, you know, training their dog from a puppy. So, so at minimum, in 6 classes, I would say we can get this stuff resolved, okay? If you want more control, then we have the 9 to 12 week programs, okay? Good. The 9 to 12 week programs, which, you know, there's 6 formal obedience commands: sit, stay, down, come, place, heel. I focus on the 2, heel and recall, because those are the 2 most important commands. Heel because of reactivity, helps calm her down. Recall, just in case she gets off the leash, okay? Everything else is kind of superficial. It's if you want it or need it. Yep. With the 12-week program, that's where we train the dog to be completely off-leash reliable with all the commands, or as many as we can get in, because you have the variable behavior here. Otherwise, the only command that needs to be off-leash reliable is the recall, okay? Because if come and called is not reliable off-leash, it's kind of pointless, right? Because that's when you're going to need it. Questions so far?
No, I mean, it all makes sense so far. I think it all sounds really good. It's mostly just a question of timing and pricing and stuff.
Sure.
Like this.
So like the 6-week program is $950. Part of your consultation fee gets credited towards that program. Okay.
And can we see where we're at in 6 weeks and then go another 3
You
weeks
can.
before?
So for instance, let's say someone does 12, they get a cheaper per class rate because they're doing 12.
Right.
If you do 6, it's $950, right? And then if you do another 6, it would be another $950 as opposed to a prorated rate. Okay. But I don't care. I have a lady doing that with her Roddy. She started with 6 because she didn't have high hopes, and then she was like, holy shit, this is really good, and she's doing another 6, okay?
Right.
So I don't care.
9?
Excuse me?
What's the 9?
Off the top of my head, I don't know the pricing, just because I made that up, but it's on my website.
Gotcha.
You go to my website, look to obedience, you'll see all the pricing there, okay? So with actually, I think the 12 is $1,675, now that I think about it, so the 9 is like right in the middle somewhere, okay?
Yeah, that would make sense. 950 would be 1900 or something.
Yeah. So, but I don't care. But looking at what I'm seeing here and what you're dealing with, I would expect within 6 classes we can get that stuff done. Okay. Now, behavior is a variable. I expect by that 2nd or 3rd class, reactivity should really just be on a decline. Okay. As long as you're following my instructions, we should be doing good. We continue as we planned, right?
And does obviously the person doing the training matters. Between me and my wife, should we try to alternate coming here to...
If you can both make it, that'd be great. Definitely the first class, if possible, getting the both of you.
I just don't know, just because our daughter's she's like
Sure.
4 months old.
What I would do is I would prioritize who's the weakest
I'm
handler.
taking her out more often. My wife is less confident with her because she's just smaller and not as strong. So if something does happen, she might get dragged over to the.
What I would probably do is prioritize your wife first.
Okay.
The first class is the hardest class. Okay, because no one knows what they're doing. She's going to make a lot of mistakes. She's going to learn a lot more. But physically, you have more capacity to control your dog than your wife. Does that make sense?
Yep, definitely.
Now, the bonus is we were also recording these. So even though you're not there, you just watch your video and go like, okay, this is how my dog learned. This will happen with my wife. Okay? So, and then if you come in for class 2 and you watch the video, that's fine, because now I'm just filling you in. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So that's not a problem. Like, you're not the first people. Ideally, we'd like to have both of the first class. If not,
swing it, but I think it's probably doubtful.
Sure. The collar that she would need runs about 325-ish. It's meant for 70-pound dogs and over. It's the most powerful collar there is. Trust me, you're going to want to get that collar, because what people don't account for is just dogs' physical resiliency. So there's only one collar I'd recommend. It's that one, and Maria will send you that information. And when you get it, you want to read your manual. You want to fiddle with it, make sure it works correctly. This way you don't get a lemon, because that can happen because it is an electric tool. When you move the dial, there's 127 settings in increments of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way to 127. If you find it's jumpy, like 5 to 63 to 42 type of deal, really sensitive, you have a lemon, return it. Okay, and then just tell us, we'll push back, because we can't do anything with that collar. It's super rare, but it can happen. Okay. The prong that she's on here, it looks like it's a 3.3 millimeter. Is it just all the one direction, or is there a plate in the middle?
I believe it's all the one direction.
Okay. We can see how she does with your wife. There's a collar. It's the same style prong and everything like that. I would go most likely a size down. It looks like maybe a 3.3, and the plate is in the center. The reason why I would suggest that is because it keeps it more centered, so it's not twisting. Also, with the thicker prongs, you require more physical to get the point across than with the smaller one. Okay, but it's meant for dogs her size. They run anywhere between $13 to $25 depending on the market. So, but we'd send you the information for that as well. Okay. Great. Other questions?
No. Is it consecutive weeks?
Yeah. If if you have a rotating schedule, like, we can work around it. But if you have, like, let's say a particular time that works for you every single week, that would be your time. Okay. So, like, let's say Monday at 4 o'clock was open, and we're like, sure, here you go. For 6 weeks plus 1, so 7 weeks, 4 o'clock is your time. No one can take it from you. Okay. If you happen to reschedule a few classes, you don't lose the classes, but you may lose the time if we need somebody else. So you have priority over those 7 weeks, and then if you have a couple left over because of reschedules, we may have to put you at a different time. Okay, which four on a Monday typically isn't like in high demand, but just so you know.
I think we're very flexible right now, so this should be good.
Okay.
How soon do you have availability?
Maria would know that. I don't talk about my calendar because it's constantly changing. If you have a flexible schedule, then you're good. Okay, because then we could put you in like at 11 o'clock on a Monday or something like that, because it's the evenings and the weekends that are my busiest times, because most people are 9 to 5. Okay, so that's not a problem. Anything else?
I don't think so. Just from what you've seen of how alert she is and stuff, you don't have any. Where's she at compared to some of the dogs that you work with?
I've had worse.
Much worse.
The fact that you're able to de-escalate her with the prong is good. Like, I get dogs where you're just rearing back and it's like nonstop, and it's from like 30 feet away. She's very alert, but you were still able to de-escalate her. She only had that one outburst, but you were doing really good about being consistent, of always pulling up. So even though she keeps jumping up because she's nervous, you're able to calm her down. Okay. E-collar, of course, is going to make that much more easily because it's press a button. Okay. I don't foresee any issues, but she is a large dog, so just factor that in. What can happen is if the dog is too far gone in a reactive state, they can override the collar, which Is why I'm telling you, just get the highest powered one, so we don't even have to worry about that. Worst case scenario, and I've only ever had that happen twice, is you can always pair a second collar to the system. So I had 2 dogs that were 150 pounds over 10 years that were hyper aggressive, and they would blow past 1 collar, not phased at all.
Right.
So then I was like, all right, let's put a second one. See what happens here. Go ahead and pull her up into a sitting position. Yeah, there you go. And up, up, up. Up. There you go. Good, and relax. Good. You got a dog coming up behind you, just so you know. Yeah. Now that one, because that dog, right, very postured, very threatening, started barking, is why you got a deeper bark there, okay? But you see here, there's no residual tension. I would have expected after that occurrence, and then that happening right after, she'd be going at it again, okay? So little things like that are good, okay? And and you were able to, again, to settle her pretty quick with just the upwards tension on that prong. So, questions?
No, not really. No, I think we're interested. We want to do something.
Okay, so Maria will get in contact with you. I'll fill her in on everything I told you today. She'll follow up. She'll send you all the information for the collar, the prong collar, and all that stuff. If you wanted to start educating yourselves, our YouTube videos are up. Lesson 1s are great to watch because no one knows what's going on. Otherwise, if you feel like your wife needs more confidence and stuff, her getting over the first class would be good. And then you can alternate between the two.
I mean, actually, I think if anything, well, she listens to us both about equally, so we'll talk about it.
Sure. Yeah. Whatever you plan. I mean, I leave it up to you.
Okay.
But we should be. I don't think there should be an issue, but it's an animal.
Awesome. Yeah. Okay. So we'll have Maria email us, and we'll get started as soon as we can.
And if there's a little bit of a delay, we had or have a lot of people submitting consultation forms and starting training and stuff, more than usual. I think just because now that we're with COVID dogs and stuff, we're just gotten this huge influx. So don't be alarmed. But if anything, you can just shoot her an email and say, "Hey, Maria, please send us those forms." But I'll talk to her and tell her, like, here, this is what you're gonna send them.
Perfect. Yeah, and for us, I mean, we'll get started no matter what. But we might be going out of town for a bit in April. So
that's a problem. No problem.
Then we can get
if you end up, like, for whatever reason, your trip is in between the training, it's not a problem. It won't affect your training or anything like that. Yeah, it's not a problem at all. It happens all the time. Okay?
Okay.
Awesome. Anything else?
No. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. And if you have any questions, just shoot us an email. We'll get back to you. Okay?
Awesome.
Thank you so much. Take care.